Yo, YouTube, what's going on, everyone? HusKerrs here with a brand new Warzone video just in time for the relaunch of Verdansk. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with who I am, I'm a pro BR player, content creator. I've been playing Warzone since it came out on March 10th of 2020. And even before that, I was playing Apex professionally and H1Z1. And I think I have just under $400,000 earned in Warzone alone. So, definitely been around the block a few times. Now, for this video, I wanted to make a complete comprehensive settings video for you guys, going over every single setting in Warzone and telling you guys what the best settings are to get the most FPS, still have good graphics, and have the best colors, and just have the best settings to give you guys a competitive edge. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. All right, guys, so we have keyboard and mouse, controller, graphics, audio, interface, and account and network. I'm going to do the bottom four first because these will apply to everyone no matter what input you're on. And then we'll do keyboard and mouse, and then I'll touch on a few controller settings last, even though I don't play on controller. So let's hop right into graphics first. All right, so on the first page, display mode, I use full screen exclusive. This is what I recommend for pretty much all of you. This ensures you get the most FPS and the least amount of input latency. You can play on full screen borderless. I know it's nicer, like you can alt tab quicker and all of that. And I know that I know Windows 11 has made improvements with this to minimize input latency, but if you're playing competitively at all, if you want to have, the least amount of input latency and the most FPS no matter what, I'd recommend full screen exclusive. Now, for the rest of these, screen refresh rate, you just want it to be on the highest that your monitor offers. Display resolution, I play at 1440p. I think that is the sweet spot for Warzone and for pretty much all BRs and most like shooter games in general. You could play at 1080p if you guys want, but I just think the visual clarity you get with 1440p over 1080 is just so nice. So that's what I play on. If you have like the best of the best, PC, if you have like a 5090 and a 9800X 3D, you could play at 4K as long as you have like one of those 4K 240 hertz monitors. And I mean, that'd be great too. So, gamma brightness, this one, I would have it somewhere between 50 to 55. 50 is default. I like upping it a little more than the default value. NVIDIA Reflex low latency. If you guys have an NVIDIA graphics card, you definitely want to have this either on or on plus boost. I do on because I manually overclock my GPU, so I feel like with it on plus boost, it actually it might hurt me a little bit because I did the multiplayer in-game benchmark and I actually got less frames with on plus boost. So, but regardless, you definitely want it on one of these bottom two options. For the rest of these in this menu, this doesn't actually affect anything in-game, but I do eco mode preset custom, off for VSync, unlimited frame rates. I do recommend having it to on unlimited. These ones don't matter, native, off, 0. Oh, and then high dynamic range. I'd recommend turning this off for Warzone and any like shooter game or competitive game. Wouldn't recommend using HDR, but if you're playing a game like Skyrim or like some role-playing game, and you want to have like the best graphics, sure, turn it on for that game. Now, for the quality tab, render resolution, you want to keep this at 100 regardless of what resolution you're playing at. So if you have it set to 1080p, then if you have this value at 100, it should say 1080p here. So just leave that at 100. Don't use dynamic resolution. For upscaling sharpening, I recommend Fidelity FX Cast. This is just a sharpener, not an upscaler. And I set mine to 75. I would set this somewhere between 75 to 100. If you guys want, the other one that I would recommend would be NVIDIA DLSS. And I would do the quality preset and have sharpness again somewhere between 75 to 100. You guys will notice if you have no upscaling or sharpening on, the game will look kind of blurry. So that's where having Fidelity FX on can really help just sharpen the game up. Now, for frame gen, I would not use frame gen for Warzone or for any shooter game or any sort of competitive game in general, because while this can boost your FPS a pretty good amount, it also adds input latency, which is very bad. You do not want to add input latency for your mouse or your controller, so I would keep this off. For the VRAM scale target, If you set this too high, you run the risk of your game stuttering if you are like running other programs on your PC. So if you guys like stream on the same PC, or if you have Google Chrome open or even Discord open, you could run into issues. So I would just leave this on 70, which is the default value. I would have it somewhere between like 60 to 80, but I would just do 70. For variable rate shading, this is a setting that can boost your FPS a good amount. And I believe what it does is it kind of like blurs the outer edges of your screen, maybe, or it does something like that. But it really doesn't like, it doesn't decrease the graphic quality of the game really too much. And it does give you a noticeable boost in FPS. So I recommend having this on. For texture resolution, this one, I would set it somewhere between very low to normal. If you want to absolutely maximize FPS, no matter what your graphics look like, you can do it to very low. I like having it on normal because it does kind of improve the quality, the graphic quality of the game a bit, and it doesn't have too much of an impact on your FPS. So I like normal. Now for the rest of these, you want to have this on the lowest possible. So this on low, off, low, very low, off, off, low, minimal with 16 allocated texture cache size. Again, low, very low. These are all like the lowest it goes. Off, 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 low, off, low, off, 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 off. I've been playing on these settings for like years now, and the game still looks great to me, but it also gives me great FPS. So I don't think having any of these on high is going to give you much of a difference in graphics, in like graphic quality, but it could potentially hurt your FPS a lot. So this is what I strongly recommend you guys do for your graphic settings under the quality tab. Now for the view tab, for field of view, this is kind of personal preference. I have always played on the max FOV because I want to see the absolute most that I can in the game. If you guys want, if it feels like too zoomed out for you, or you don't like the fisheye effect that it kind of gives, although I will say you definitely get used to it, you guys could lower this maybe to like 105 or 110. I probably wouldn't go below 105. I would pick somewhere between 110 to 120, but I play max. Now for ADS field of view, this one is very important. I don't remember what the default value is, but make sure this is on affected. If you have it on affected, your visual recoil is going to look so much less than if it's on independent. And if you don't believe me, go into a game, put it on independent, and then ADS with a gun and shoot, and it'll look like you have way more recoil. So definitely have this on affected. For the weapon and vehicle field of view, this doesn't really matter too much, but having these on wide will make your weapon and the vehicle, it'll make the weapon look smaller on the screen and the vehicle will look further. So it actually does kind of help you see more on your screen if you have these settings on. All right, now for these ones are pretty important too. You do not want to have any blur in the game at all. So turn these off. And again, camera movement, you want to have this on the least possible. So make sure it's on least 50%. And lastly, for inverted flashbang, this is kind of personal preference. If you want the screen to go black when you get flashbanged, turn it on. It's a cool little setting if you guys want. All right, let's move over to the audio tab. Now, full disclosure, guys, this huge update just came out today, or the day of me recording this video. And anytime there's a major update, like audio settings always change. So I can't tell you what like the absolute best audio settings are right now, but there are a few things that I definitely want to point out in here. So first, dialogue volume. This is the volume of the actual announcer in the game whenever he says certain things. So like whenever an enemy UAV is called in and the announcer goes like enemy UAV, that's that volume. So this volume is important, but I like having it somewhere between 25 to 50 because that way it's not so loud that it's like masking footstep audio. So you definitely still want to hear this audio, but I would recommend turning it down a bit. So I do 25. Now for for the music volume, I don't like having any music playing at all. Especially this one. Like you don't want to be end game and like the music is playing while you're in like an intense situation because that's just distracting. So have that off. Again, this is where like I think this stuff is definitely going to change as like we figure out what like the best audio settings are with this new massive update. For now though, I'm using enhanced headphone mode. I'm using headphone bass boost, And I think that's it. Oh, I recommend turning on reduced tinnitus sound, because like, why wouldn't you want to make the flash grenade shell shock sound be more dull or murky? I feel like it's just nicer for your ears. And lastly, hit marker preset. I like classic, but this is kind of personal preference. I think classic sounds best. All right, moving over to the interface tab. Not too much in here. I like having skip introduction movie on, so that way whenever you launch the game, you don't get that movie every time. Gameplay tips you guys can turn off. That's not really important. And telemetry, again, doesn't really matter. This is that info at the top left of your screen. I like having them on because I like seeing what my FPS is, GPU temp, GPU clock, all of that. Readability, this does have a pretty important setting in here. If you guys go to color customization and you go down to the color filter, I would set this to filter 2, change the filter target to both, and max both the world color and interface color intensity at 100. What this will do is this will help make the colors a little more vibrant in the game. So if you guys look at this map on the right hand side, if I go back to no filter, you'll notice the colors will get a little duller. You see how the colors are duller with none? So filter 2 just kind of brightens it up a little bit. And on top of this, if you guys want the colors even more vibrant, I'd recommend going into your NVIDIA control panel, assuming you have an NVIDIA graphics card, going to digital vibrance and upping it to maybe like 60 or 65. I feel like that's like a sweet spot. The default value is 50%. So if you up it to like 60, 65, it'll make the game look even more vibrant. So I think that's what I do. I think I have it at 60. For gameplay HUD, not too much in here. Make sure minimap shape is on square. Stamina bar, this is a pretty new setting. So this allows you to see how much attack sprint you have left. So a cool little thing they added. I would do display near health if you want it on. Don't put it near your crosshair because you don't want it in the middle of your screen. And I think that's it. Crosshair. I like having my crosshair on static with the crosshair spread off. That way your crosshair has the least amount of movement as possible, which in my opinion is better because the more your crosshair is swaying and moving, just the more distracting it is. So I'd do those. And then set the color to whatever you like. I like a nice bright teal color over the default white. But if you guys want to do red or green, do whatever you like. All right, and lastly, before we get into keyboard and mouse controller, is account and network. Nothing really important in here, except I would turn off clouded settings. I believe there have been some bugs with this being on in the past where like it won't save settings or something. So turn that off. And otherwise, maybe turn off dismemberment and gore effects. Just again, so there's less visual distractions on your screen while you're in a game. All right, now to the fun part for you fellow mouse and key players. Let's head over to this tab. For mouse sensitivity, this is personal preference. For the ground and air vehicle sense, I kind of just set this to like a random value that felt good to me. But this is all up to you. I will say though, under the mouse advanced settings, you're going to want to make sure your mouse wheel delay is on 0. And then otherwise, ADS sensitivity, transition timing, default value is gradual. That's always what I've used. You could try instant. I've thought about it, and like I guess theoretically, instant might be better because that way, like your brain knows that whenever you hold down right click and you aim in, your brain would switch to like your ADS sensitivity. But I don't know. I don't think it really matters. I would just keep it on gradual. ADS sensitivity type. I've always used relative since like Call of Duty Blackout like 7 years ago. I know some people like Metaphor use Legacy. Here's a description of the two on the right hand side. I've just always used relative. This one is kind of personal preference. You really got to try both of them to see which one feels most natural or best to you personally. But if you guys want to know what I use relative. And lastly on this page for mouse distance coefficient, I left this on the default value of 1.33. I know some people have tried other values like 0 or 1.78. If you have it on 0, it'll make your ADS sense be like way slower. Whereas if you have it on 1.78, it'll make your ADS sense like basically identical to your hipfire sense. So you can kind of play around with it if you want. Some people claim that, you know, their tracking or aim feels better on like 0 or 1.78, but I would stick to one of those 3 values for that. Now back on this page, I did want to mention about ADS sensitivity multiplier. I use the default value of 1.0. So my hipfire and ADS sense with like ARs, with like red dots or SMGs nearly feels identical. But with like a sniper or like a high zoom scope, it is slowed down. And that's where relative comes into play. Relative kind of like automatically will make your ADS sensitivity slower depending on the zoom of the scope. But if you guys want to play around with this, and most people I would say have this value somewhere between 0.7 to 1.0. So if you do feel like your ADS sense is a little too quick, you could try lowering this, maybe do like 0.9, 0.85, 0.8, or maybe even 0.7. But I wouldn't go below that, because if you go to like 0.5 or something, I feel like the sensitivity between hipfire and ADS is such a large gap that it'll mess you up. So that's my recommendation. All right, now for keybinds, system key behavior, I would set this to gang. This way, if you hit your Windows key in the game, you won't accidentally tab out of the game. For keybinds, a lot of these are gonna be kind of personal preference. I've always set prone dive to Z. I've just played on that forever. Big thing I will mention though, that this is pretty new ever since the Black Ops 6 integration, but there is like a new movement tech for mouse and key players exclusively, where you can like do back-to-back slide cancels, or you can even like be prone and then go immediately into a slide cancel from prone. And the way you do this is by setting a dedicated slide keybind. So before the Black Ops 6 integration, I used to always slide cancel with C, and so my crouch / slide used to always be C. But now I set my dedicated slide keybind to C, and then I just set this crouch slide keybind to left control. Because what happens if you do the dedicated slide keybind is you'll get a lot less dead slides, and you'll be able to do that movement tech like I mentioned, where you can do like back-to-back slide cancels, but you won't be able to like crouch in place anymore. So you want to still have this bound to something so you can crouch in place. So I still slide cancel with C, but if I ever need to crouch for some reason, I hit left control now. This is what this keybind does now. Let's see. I don't think anything else I changed on here. Going down here, if you guys use next weapon, previous weapon to swap between weapons, more power to you. I'll let you guys know what I do for that in a second. Weapon mount doesn't. You can kind of make this whatever you want. I don't really mount ever, but I set that to Q. Fire mode, again, I like rarely ever need to change the fire mode, so I just made that some random key on my keyboard, L. For lethal and tactical equipment, I set these to the side buttons on my mouse, and the reasoning for that is that I wanted to be able to use my lethal and my tactical equipment while still having access to all of my movement keys and full control of my mouse. So with this setup, I'm able to be cooking a frag grenade and hit WASD and like be able to, you know, aim completely normal with my mouse. So that's my logic behind it. But you guys can do whatever you want. Field upgrade, I set to F because I use E for interact, which most of you probably do. But yeah, so I use E for interact. And then for armor plate, I set that to V. Again, kind of personal preference. Now, if we go into combat advanced keybinds, this is where I use 1, 2, and 3 for my primary weapon, secondary weapon, and melee weapon, respectively. So quick description or quick explanation for why I do this. Ever since Call of Duty Blackout, I've always had this set up for my weapon keybinds. So if I have an AR and an SMG in my loadout, I know that if I hit 1 on my keyboard, I am always going to have my AR out. And if I hit 2, I'm always going to have my SMG out. So it's just kind of like a muscle memory thing. And then I also, I hit 3 for my melee weapon now. You guys will see me, even if I'm using like an SMG and sniper, my brain has been trained to know that if I have like the SMG in my first slot and sniper in my second slot, you know, in my inventory in the bottom, I always know if I hit 1 on my keyboard, I'm gonna pull out my SMG. If I hit 2, I'm always gonna pull out my sniper. So that's what I do. If you do copy me, just know that you may run into situations where you sometimes will open up your inventory and you'll notice the guns are like swapped at the bottom. That's where you'll see me like drop both my guns and pick them back up, to make sure that I always have the AR in the first slot and the SMG in the second slot. So that's why I do it. Score streak 1, this is a keybind for your kill streaks, like a precision or a UAV. I set that to 4. Now going through the rest of these vehicle keybinds, doesn't really matter. I use C for next seat, which is my side keybind. And the rest doesn't really matter. C again for next seat on heli. And oh, I did change descend in the heli to Z, which is like my prone dive keybind, but it doesn't really matter. It's whatever you want. Right, and for the rest, only thing left, I believe, on this page is ping. You guys can set ping to whatever you want. I use T. I will say for pinging is a very important keybind, because being able to ping someone mid gunfight gives you a huge advantage, especially as a mouse and key player. So my recommendation for the ping keybind is to set this to some key that you can hit while still having access to W, A, S, and D. So in a sense, like T is actually not the best because I'm not able to, you know, ping and be holding D at the same time. But that's just what I'm used to. If I was starting brand new, I would probably set my ping keybind to something like V, which you can hit with your thumb, because that way I'd still be able to hit, you know, W, A, S, and D at the same time. So quick little tip for pinging. This one, I don't think this matters. Overlay advanced keybinds, I didn't change that. And, lastly, menu advanced keybinds. I have a great tip for you guys here. So if you guys have changed your interact key to E like I do, if you set settings quick search to E, this will give you the ability to open and close the buy station with E. So if you don't do this though, I'm sure a lot of you guys are probably so used to having to close the buy station by hitting like escape. Well, if you set this keybind to the same key as your interact key, you can open and close the buy with the same key. So super important one there. Otherwise, the rest of these don't matter. All right, moving over to the movement tab. For sprint assist, this tactical sprint assist is the same thing as auto tac sprint from previous versions of Warzone. For mouse and keyboard, in general, I don't really recommend it, but I do know some people that do use it. It's kind of up to you. If you do use it, I would recommend having the delay on 0, keeping these on, but I don't. And I'll give you some reasons for why I don't here in a second. Corner slice, I would keep this off. Mantle assist, crouch assist, don't even bother with these. For prone behavior, I changed this to go to because this allows me to spam my prone keybind without having to worry about accidentally standing up. So I like that because if I'm ever in like an intense gunfight and I need to go prone, I can just spam my prone keybind to quickly go prone as soon as possible and not accidentally stand up. Because the way that I stand up whenever I'm prone is I just like hit shift and W. Like I just sprint forward to stand up. So otherwise though, sprint tac sprint behavior, I changed this to hold. This is up to you. I like hold because that way I know that in order for me to sprint, I have to be holding down shift. But if you guys like toggle, go for it. I would keep sprint restore and slide and maintain sprint to on. It just makes movement feel better. If you have these off, sometimes you'll like slide cancel and try to sprint again, and there'll be like a weird delay, or you'll like walk for a split second. So definitely keep these on. However, I would turn off mantle cancels reload, because you want to be able to like reload while you're still mantling stuff. Oh, also parachute automatic behavior. Turn this off. You don't want to accidentally, or you don't want the game to like automatically pull your parachute. So just turn that off. Movement advanced settings. Ground and mantle, I would turn this off. That way you won't accidentally mantle things like mid gunfight while you're like jump shotting. And tactical sprint activation, I would definitely change this to single tap run. Especially, or if you use auto tac sprint, I think it doesn't matter. But if you don't use auto tac sprint, you want to change this to single tap run. And the reasoning for that is you will only have to hit shift once to be able to tac sprint. If you leave this on single tap sprint, I believe you have to hit left shift twice to be able to tac sprint, which doesn't feel great. So change this to single tap run. And this is what I was going to talk about earlier. The reason that I don't use auto tac sprint is because if you set this setting up, and if you do that, then mouse and key gives you the ability to still be able to like walk left and right, but you can easily just tac sprint by just hitting shift once. So that's what I do. Leave sprinting door bash on, turn off auto door peek, and the rest don't matter. Vehicle behaviors, I believe the only thing I changed on here was I changed the camera initial position to free look. This allows you to like run up to a vehicle, have your camera be facing one direction, get in the vehicle, and your camera stays in that direction. So I feel like it just feels more natural to have it on free look. So I recommend that. And last tab, combat. I personally don't use tac stance at all, so these don't matter for me. If you guys do use this, I would just do kind of whatever feels best to you based on your keybinds. For dedicated melee weapon activation, if you guys do use a dedicated melee weapon keybind like I do, which as I showed you guys, I use 3 on my keyboard. You want to have this to set to your dedicated keybind. This will allow you to instantly pull out your melee weapon, which is great. Fun little fact, controller players can't do this unless they have like a special controller like the Scuff and Vision that has like PC buttons on them. But for like 99% of controller players, they can't pull out their melee weapon instantly. They have to like hold a button. So this allows you to be able to just instantly press a button and you can pull out your melee weapon, which is great. For the rest of these, I don't think it really matters. Combat advanced keybinds. Make sure you turn off sprint cancels reload. You want to be able to reload while sprinting, so make sure you turn that off. Armor plate behavior, keep that to apply all, so that way you only have to hit your armor keybind once to put in all your plates. C4 detonation, do one by one. That gives you the ability to throw one C4 and detonate it instead of having to throw like both of them to detonate it. And lastly, I would change akimbo behavior to paired. This gives you the ability to only hold down like either left mouse button or right mouse button, and it'll shoot both guns at the same time if you have akimbo guns, which is great. And I think that is it for mouse and keyboard. All right, guys. Lastly, controller. Again, full disclosure, I am not a controller player, so I'm gonna give you guys the real basics that I like know for a fact every controller player should be doing. So vibration, turn that off. You don't want controller vibration. Dead zone inputs. If you guys have like a new controller, or you have one of those controllers with like the Hall effect sticks or like the magnetic sticks that like have no stick drift, I would keep it on either like 1 or maybe 2. But if you guys do have like an older controller that does have pretty bad stick drift, you might have to set this to whatever value is best for your controller. Now for the left stick max though, for everyone, I would have this on 70. I know like all the pro controller players do this because if you have it on 70, I believe it requires you to have to move your left thumbstick less to activate your tac sprint. So in essence, it actually allows you to like tac sprint quicker, or like activate it quicker. So I'd recommend putting that at 70. Now for the right stick max, I would keep that at like 99. You want to have that maxed out. And again, for the triggers, you pretty much want this at like the smallest value possible. However, if you have it at like 0, I think some people might have issues where like the controller will like shoot your gun when you don't even mean to. So to avoid that, have it at like 1 or 2. For aiming, make sure you have aim assist on, of course. Why the heck wouldn't you? Aim assist is so busted in this game. Definitely have that on. And going off of that, aim response curve type, the best one in the game is dynamic. You guys 100% want to be using dynamic aim response curve type. Now for the rest of this, gradual or instant zoom, I would not use after zoom. And I think the rest aren't too important. Motion sensor behavior off. Movement, if you guys are in controller, in general, I do recommend using tactical sprint assist. Most pro controller players that I know do use it. Again, make sure you have no delay on, have these on. Yeah, auto tac sprint feels way better on controller than mouse and keys. So I would recommend using it. Not everyone does, but in general, I'd recommend it. Make sure you turn off corner slice. Slide diving behavior, I would set this to hybrid. This gives you the ability to only have to like tap a button to slide, and you can also still dive. If you don't have this on hybrid, then I believe you would have to like hold to either slide or dive. But with hybrid, you should be able to like tap a button to slide and only have to tap a button to dive. So hybrid's the best for that. Automatic airborne mantle partial. Keep these on. Parachute automatic behavior off again. Mantle cancel to reload off. For movement advanced settings, if you use auto tac sprint, I think regardless, I believe this doesn't matter, but I would just do single tap run just to be safe. Sprinting door bash on. And lastly, under combat, armor plate behavior apply all. C4 detonation 1 by 1. Interact reload behavior. I know this is a big one. I believe most people use prioritize interact, but this one's kind of personal preference, whatever feels most natural to you. It's not a huge deal. Whatever you get used to, you'll be fine. And again, akimbo behavior, do paired. Oh, and sprint cancels reload. You want to make sure this is turned off. And yeah, I think that's all I got for controller. And I believe that is it for all the settings. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a long one, but I appreciate you guys watching the whole thing. Make sure you guys drop a sub on the channel, turn noties on, and a quick reminder, if you guys don't know, I do live stream to both Twitch and YouTube simultaneously. I'm live on both platforms pretty much every day. So if you guys ever want to watch me play live, check those out. Twitch.tv/HusKerrs, YouTube.com/HusKerrs. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.